definitely need to change this picture because it is very old. But one thing that's also quite old, when I speak to people around emails, there is sort of that conversation around the antiquity and sort of it fading out of use. And yes, there is that discussion of people using Teams to message internally, but also now externally, those capabilities are expanding. But there are certain limitations. You can't message those on Google tenants. You can set those restrictions for people messaging you. The one channel that is still open is email, and we don't really see this changing for the foreseeable. Even a 50-person organization is sending around 2,000 emails every day, and that includes those who aren't necessarily working in the office, those who are maybe for certain businesses on sites, who are field agents, whatever it might be. This is really one of those channels that really goes underutilized because it's one of the ones we don't really consider. And the way I like to talk around email is kind of like a digital handshake. Whenever you're making that first impression with people, it's that first thing they see. And so what we want to do is get it right. And often when we talk around getting it right, changes to email signatures do take a lot longer than you expect. Not in the same way, though. So if you're rolling out sort of an infrastructure project or a networking project, you can put an amount of time to how much time this is going to take. You're putting a week to get that all set up. Maybe there are certain calls further down the line. But because email signatures are a lot more infrequent, these changes, it could be in line with marketing updates. It could be tickets that get submitted. It's very difficult to put a specific amount. And I always ask this question to people I engage with, a specific amount of the time that you're engaging with. And often when you take a step back and realize means is that, number one, people aren't making as many changes as they'd like to in line with marketing campaigns. And number two, it's getting in the way of whatever other projects that you're trying to get on with. And this will push back those timelines. It will push back those budgets as well. And then those projects become a lot more difficult to explain to people up above, to external stakeholders, whoever it might be. And a big thing as well, especially I know that CSG does fantastic work with highly regulated companies. When we talk around disclaimers as well, there is that legal risk of not having these applied. Obviously, this isn't something that will occur every other day, but when this does happen, it is a massive headache, not just for the IT team, not just for the marketing team, but for the whole company. And so if we can standardize a way to include these, it really does take a lot of headache out of the equation. And so that's where Exclaimer comes in. Exclaimer can automatically apply that. Just make sure you've got that peace of mind going forwards. And another way that people are using this, and to speak a little bit on the marketing side, people are consolidating more and more. We're seeing a lot more people, sort of take out third-party tech that they view as maybe a nice to have more than a necessity. But one thing that will never be taken out is your email signature. There are these capabilities within Google, within Microsoft. Exclaimer is there to enhance them. So this isn't really a question of taking it out completely, because then you'd be left with a very inconsistent brand and no real image to external recipients. But when we talk around the marketing features that can be used, we can amplify what's in these email signatures and really turn them into a marketing channel. It's low cost, it's not very invasive, and there are certain elements within, especially our Pro package, which I'll go into and talk around in a bit, that really enable marketing teams to make the most out of something that you don't really have to spend a lot on and you're using already. And this is where consistent branding comes in as well. We can make sure that that is already applied to every signature in the organization. I speak to people who like to give control to those end users, and in the era of personalization, they allow them to make those changes themselves. And this usually comes back and hits them in terms of, the changes that these people are making aren't in line with the branding of the organization. And it's often on IT to rectify those mistakes. When these tickets get submitted, I'm not sure how every single IT team is targeted. Vast majority is going to be on MTTR. And so when these tickets comes in, they have to be remediated. And so by putting Exclaimer in, what you can really do is take away a lot of that time necessary, and you can automate and centralize that. So I did mention there, this is something you can do in 365. One of the areas in which, again, very heavily underutilized is the HTML coding used to push email signatures. And I think the reason why this is underutilized is because it takes so much time to push out. Even for the smaller CIS organizations up to your large enterprises, if you're making these changes on a case-by-case basis, that's going to take time out of your day that you could often be spending doing other activities or other tasks. And so that approach with 365 is often taken out and replaced with Exclaimer in favor of the time savings that this allows, as well as sort of the deployment as well. So by centralizing all of this, you have to make one change, and then you can change and you can see how that applies to different people in the organization. By doing all of this, you can get very personalized. And I'll show exactly how we do that, but you can make sure that different signatures are sent out for different departments. You're not having to send out the same one for every single person. So you're not relinquishing the personalization that you're trying to give out. You're controlling that centrally. And you can still give that power to those individuals, but you can do so in a way that is in line with your brands and in line with the disclaimers and compliance regulations of your organization, because that is how we will achieve this in a sustainable way. We want to make less headache for your IT teams, for your marketing teams as well. We want everyone working together to turn those email signatures into not just a brand that people trust and rely on, but also a dynamic marketing tool as well. The three pillars of Exclaimer that I always talk around are the security, reliability, and compliance. I know that security is a big conversation, especially when it comes to legal financial services, but it's becoming, it's getting a seat at the table in construction, in manufacturing. It's really sort of ramping up. And this is a big consideration. So we have a large array of security accreditations by which we are compliant. We find this to be, a real sticking point for some of our customers, and so we want to give you that trust, because we know whenever you're taking some of these solutions to, get that last set of approval, this is one of the areas which we can get in front of. We can show you, listen, not only are we trusted by 67,000 customers, but this is one of the main reasons why. Reliability is a big one as well. And so we've got data centers all over the world. And the reason why I bring this up is because often people will have different operations of the business in different countries, as well as having an international presence. We want to make sure that, again, that is sustainable, and that's where the multiple data centers come into play. And then the last one is compliance. So again, touching on sort of the security accreditations and making sure that these are in line with what you're pushing out already. What we don't want to do is put something in place which goes against the regulations that you have in place already. I believe that is it for me. So just because I get into trouble sharing my screen, I often flash up the wrong window. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second and then flash up the demo environment. Listen, I'm not sat here in a lab coat and glasses. If I can go through this, anyone can. I am going to take you through a little bit of a whistle-stop tour on the Exclaimer platform, and I want to start off with access and sort of that flexibility that I was talking about. So if we go up into the corner here, what we can do under user management is we can give people different licenses. I know that when I speak to particularly IT teams, as I imagine the majority of people are on the call today, what we want to do is hand creative control back to marketing, but we don't want to give them full admin access. And so this is where you dictate the access that people have, and you can define the parameters by which they engage with the platform. So you can be confident that any changes they make, they're in line with what you would like them to. And then you can give them that full control, risk-free, and not really have to worry about it again. We can kind of hand the keys over, which really goes down quite well. And a big thing as well that goes down with a surprising array of industries is around that centralized branding that we can do too. So for those fonts, for those colors that are critical for how the business operates, I know, Eve brought up towards the start of the call, a fantastic new branding that CSG have. What we can do is we can standardize this and make sure that when these signatures are being created using the signature editors I'll go into, we really don't have to rely on people to make these changes ad hoc. These will already be applied. And so we're limiting the amount of things that they can, sort of veer away from. And this goes all the way down to, common logos, icons, and then banners and disclaimers as well. Disclaimers being, most important for compliance. So how do we actually make those signatures up? And as I mentioned before, if I can do this, anyone can. There are a number of different ways people use the drag and drop editor. I think the most common is just to give this to a design team, a communications team, whoever looks after your emails. And what we can do from here is we can get very sort of personalized with what we include, what we exclude. And I want you to just keep an eye on the window here at the bottom, because any changes that we make up in this signature here be reflected in real time at the bottom. And I think the reason why I bring that up is because there are multiple people that I speak to who have maybe something similar in place or are trying to do something similar on their own. But whenever these make these changes, they have to go out, they have to test this email, they have to come back in. And that really defeats the point of putting something in place to automate a lot of these changes. So by having this update at the bottom, we're just going to replace this with an image. Sorry, Alex. But we'll just put that in, again, with one of these preloaded images, giving people that freedom to choose from. We also have the option to embed custom images. So when that sort of comes across and you are putting out a different campaign, by embedding this, we can have those one-off differences and we can apply these to different departments in the organization. But before, again, just want to show the array of things we've got on the left here. But before I dive into how these are actually sent out, just want to touch on some of the smaller things that do make a lot of difference. So if we go to size at the bottom here, and we are looking at this icon, here we go. So if we were to put the width to 500, say, again, I don't know why anyone would want to put it that big, but as you can see, we have that control and we can make those changes in real time. Just pop that back down. And we can make those small changes, add padding to various elements. So if you keep your eye on the logo, again, those small changes that really do make a lot of difference, and we can make sure that we get very, very personalized. When it comes into how these are applied, so if we go into the manage section here, and we have an overview of senders. So there is that option to put a signature to everyone in the organization. Everyone has that exact same signature. But again, speaking on this aspect of control, by connecting to your Active Directory, we can pull certain groups that are already in your AD, and we can add different groups and make sure that these, can get very specific. Again, when it comes to specific senders, and depending on the, how dispersed your office is, we can actually, through the advanced query, put this down to, it's a big drop-down menu, but let's just say street. We can layer these attributes now, and we can have different signatures for different teams in different offices. So you're not getting rid of that personalization. You're just making sure you can do that in a way that's sustainable and can scale with the business as well. And one thing that I should mention as well when it comes to arranging some of these promotional campaigns, again, what we don't want to do is go back into this console every single time and schedule campaigns that really don't really change, in line with seasonal promotions. If you pop a Santa hat on at Christmas, what we can do is we can save this banner and then we can roll this out during that specific time frame. Again, making sure that you're not really in this console, or should I say, marketing is not really in this console. They can just be rest assured that this is going to go out. And just one more, because I've made that change, that's going to make me, there we go. And then one more thing that we can go into is the application of this. So we've got two. We've got a method that will apply on the server level. So that will make sure that every email sent out will have this stamped and make sure that, branding will be consistently applied. But we've also got that client side, or what we say, see before you send. So when you're composing this email, you can have an array of different signatures depending on the level of trust you give your users. And what this means is that they can choose which signature is most applicable based on the person they're talking to. And this allows them to see what they're sending before, and then make sure that that is the right decision. Perhaps you're chasing some G2 reviews. Perhaps you'd like to push some LinkedIn posts. You can empower the user at this point and make sure that they are, feeling involved in this. Because what we don't want to do is make them feel like a lot of this has been taken out of their hands unnecessarily.
So I've had some questions come through, Tom. Is there a limit on the number of signatures you can make?
Great question. So the way in which we operate, so we've got a number of different licenses that we can hand out. Just being completely transparent, there is that starter license. If you want that one standardized template, that's the package you go for. But then from our standard package and upwards, you can create an unlimited amount of signatures. Go wild.
Fabulous, thank you. And Tanya's asking, what's the cost for the software? That's always a favorite question.
I think that's a conversation that we would love to pick up, and I will pass over to Eve for any of that.
Yeah, please get in touch, Tanya, with your account manager at CSG, because then they can make sure that they got the right costings for you. And another question: why would we use this above and beyond what Microsoft already provide us?
Listen, it's a great question, and I think no matter what sort of technology firm you work for, this is what's going to be asked. And again, it's if you're comfortable with those manual changes and a lot of the sort of, if you're HTML competent and you don't mind going and making those changes, that's absolutely fine. The reason why we would encourage the use of Exclaimer is, number one, marketing teams can take that creative control back, so you're not having to step in and make these changes automatically. And number two, these changes take a lot quicker. And you can be a lot more flexible. You can push out the number of campaigns that you want, and you're not limited by the resource that you have and the time that you have as well. I know, IT teams are pulled from pillar to post. The last thing you want to be doing is working on email signatures for a day or two when you've got, some massive projects coming up.
Definitely. And I know for the ease of use as well, if your marketing manager's on holiday, for example, and you've just had an event and you want to make sure that the email signature has been changed in time, you don't have to then worry, oh no, it's going to be a week promote an event that was last week. You can easily, because of the ease of use, you can easily go on, access it yourself if your marketer department is away. Another question, does the signature apply to the email sent from all devices or just from laptop? This is a good one.
Great question. This applies across the board. So for
Mm.
Microsoft customers, we can apply all of those signatures across Outlook for web, the I always get confused between those two. So Outlook for web, so the web app, and then also across the phone as well. We know that people don't just work from laptops all the time. What we don't want to do is limit, people working from their phone, people working from their laptop. So yeah, great question. They apply across the board, across all devices.
Brilliant. And it's just such a great way to stay on top of your competition and just really show that value to your clients and customers as well. Thank you all for joining. Do get in touch with your account manager if you want to have a follow-up session about Exclaimer. Like I said, just get in touch all day. And thank you again. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Eve. Thanks very much, everyone.